Morning. So, hey, I'm Marlon Nichols, MBA 2011. Johnson, stand up. Johnson, stand up. This is kind of a full circle moment for me. I'm looking for the clicker also. Because I learned venture law from Zach and operations from Dean Joe. And now I get to share the stage with them. So, a little bit about my company. Cross Culture Ventures, early stage venture capital firm, vertical agnostic, sector agnostic, geographically agnostic. We have one core principle, and that is we look, how you doing? That is we look at the convergence of global popular culture and technology with the intention of understanding consumer behavior so that we can figure out new trend lines and invest in companies that are poised to ride those trend lines. And so that takes us to culture as currency. So America's getting a facelift. It's changing. We're getting more and more brown. So what? Some of you might say, well, you know, by 2060, this room's not going to look like this. This room's going to look Black, Latinx, and Asian. And that's important, right? Because today, just focusing on the Black and the Latinx community, they spend 30% more of their disposable income on technology products and consumer products. Also, they're way more active on social media. Why is this important? Because they make a lot of noise and things happen. You guys remember the Oscars? One year it was very white. The next year it got very, very brown. That was because of that social media in these groups. Remember Uber losing about $1 billion worth of value because they were on the wrong side of the immigration bill? That's social media in these groups, this demographic, basically using their social prowess to make things happen. But they're not only consumers. They don't only speak loud. They're also creators. Here's a great example of that. So Rihanna launched a beauty brand called Fenty. Fenty basically introduced cosmetics that not only cater to the lighter portion of our population, but also the darker women in our population. And what we saw was that in the first few days, the darker shades sold out. So some people thought this was surprising, right? But women of color didn't. They're the ones buying it. The reason they're buying it is because they understand this problem so deeply. They never had this before, but they've wanted it for a long time. So someone that looked like them and experienced this problem created the solution for them. $100 million in sales in the first 40 days. Incredible. But this can also be done poorly. So here's an example of a company started by a few white men that came out of Google that have no ties to urban communities. And they created this vending machine. This vending machine it's set out to disrupt or to eliminate bodegas. But what they didn't understand is that bodegas are not just corner stores in these communities. Bodegas are places where the owner of that store might lend a single mom or might cover a single mom for milk or eggs for a week until her paycheck comes in. It's a real staple in the community. So to say that you're going to create this vending machine and do away with these staples just wasn't going to work. Also, these communities have been marginalized for a long time, and gentrification runs rampant within them. So these are like real challenges and emotions that this group feels. So when you launch this company and you say, well, we're going to eradicate bodegas, unless you have people around you that understand what that actually means to these communities, it's going to fail, which in this case it did. Lived experiences matter. Diverse teams win. There are billion-dollar opportunities within underserved communities. Billion-dollar opportunities. let's talk about some of them. Black hair. So who in here knew, raise your hands, that black hair was a $9 billion market? Not many of you. It is. Well, guess what? The vast majority of those dollars don't flow within those communities. The reason is because most black hair salons don't have the capital to carry inventory. They basically break even businesses. So a lot of the products that are sold outside of them and brought into the salons for service. So how do we solve it? One of our companies, a company named Mayvenn, they just announced a $26 million round led by Essence Ventures, also backed by Andreessen Horowitz, us, and a few other people. This company was founded by a black man who's fluent in not only English but also Mandarin, lived in China, and got into the import-export business. He also grew up around hairstylists and saw this problem firsthand. Again, culture is currency. He created a mobile and logistics company that now allows these hairstylists to carry product without carrying product. In 5 years, they've generated over $80 million in revenue, and these hairstylists that were not making any revenue off of product have now made over $20 million in commissions based on these products. Emergency response is lacking. So I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, and spent time in the Bronx. And during my day, there was this hip-hop song, 911's a Joke. Anyone familiar with that? Y'all too young? Flavor Flav. And it was a real thing, right? Because in these communities, when you called 911, the wait time was ridiculous. They wouldn't get there. People would die. People still die from this. So a real problem. And then that creates that unreliability, leads to distrust, and it's also pretty expensive for the local government and for the people. Every time an ambulance goes out, it's about $10,000, right? So the government and the patient shares that. And what this does also is, because you know the ambulance is not going to come, you run to the emergency room for every little thing, and now you have massive amount of people in the emergency room, and no one's really getting served because it's overcrowded. So enter a company called Ready Responders. Think Uber or Lyft, but for emergency response. What this company did was basically build a technology that sits behind 911 call center firewall and picks up medical-related emergencies, dispatches it out to the cloud, and then off-duty firefighters, off-duty EMT workers, doctors, nurses can be the first responders. And so this does a lot of things. One, it saves lives. Two, it saves a lot of money, because now when you call these hotlines, someone responds and determines whether an ambulance needs to go out. So local government loves this. It improves the relationship between the people in those communities and government, because now they feel like they're being heard and their challenges are being addressed. This company launched in New Orleans this spring. They're doing amazing. We'll be in Baton Rouge next, LA after that, and DC following that. So we've all heard about the unconscious bias and the problem around diversity in tech companies. We also know that there's a lack of computer engineers in the space. Why is that? Are we looking in the wrong places? Are we assuming that a big part of our population isn't capable of doing this because they didn't go to the right schools? They didn't have the privilege of going to Cornell or Stanford or MIT? Yeah, maybe. Well, this company, Catalyte, has developed artificial intelligence and machine learning technology that tests individuals for aptitude, the ability to code. And they target Not those universities that I just mentioned, but they target community colleges and Craigslist. They want raw talent. And it's about 99% accurate. And then they hire these people after they pass the test, train them for 6 months, employ them as technology consultants, and they work with some of the largest companies in the world. We have one individual that had never coded a day in his life before joining Catalyte that basically redesigned MLB's platform and it got written up in all the big media outlets. So a tremendous business. They're doing hundreds of millions in revenue and are competing with some of the biggest technology consulting firms in the world. And they're using talent that don't have the degrees that the people in this room have. So to close it up, culture is the new currency. There's a lot of untapped value in these underserved communities. We just have to peel back the covers and and look at it. And my company has pioneered this theme. And what we've seen so far is that just this year, we've seen our companies raise in this space over $100 million in follow-on financing from some of the top firms that we know about. So other people are catching on. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlon. And we have an opportunity for just a couple questions here to keep us on track. But I'd love to get any questions from the audience for Marlon.
Hello. I was wondering, how does Catalyte find the people who take the tests? Do you go to local community colleges, or do you just advertise on Craigslist and places like that? Yeah, they look for both. They're targeting community colleges now. Initially, it was all Craigslist. So if you were on Craigslist and you were looking for a job, and they thought you were interesting, they would send you something, bring you in, take the tests, and you go from there.
And then we have over here.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned how minorities will no longer be a minority, but will be 60% of the US population. But at the same time, wealth in these communities are not necessarily growing. So what suggestions do you have for, I guess, growing wealth in minority communities to kind of like take advantage of this trend that's going on?
Mm-hmm. And it seems farther off than it actually is. So in kindergarten right now, Blacks and Latinx people are actually the majority. So it's coming quickly. Secondly, these businesses are being created, right? So, I mean, if you look at celebrities like Jay-Z and Beyonce, their net worth is growing. You look at private equity professionals like Robert Smith, his network is growing. And what happens is you're going to hire people that resemble you in some way. You're going to give them opportunities, so that's going to change. And also, you're going to invest, like we're doing. You're going to invest in more people that look and are solving challenges that you care about. So that's also going to change. And just to be clear, we invest in everyone, not just diverse founders, but in things that we care about.
Another round of applause for Marlon Nichols.